You have a military background as well as a legal background yourself, John. What do you make with the latest of the Ukraine and the nuclear power plant?
Well, the Russians are trying to take advantage of this because they want to be able to have a lot of their ammunition dumps, supply depots, command and communications nodes, all around that, because they now fear a lot of the longer-range Ukrainian systems, including HIMARS. And so they've tried to take advantage of that point, and they've also disconnected it from the power grid in southern Ukraine, which is a big deal because power is going to be a short supply there. That helps, I think, the Russians exert, in their mind at least, some pressure on the Ukrainians. But more to the point, if there is heavy fighting there, even if they do try to shut down the reactor, I have a minor in physics too, is that there's still going to be a lot of fissile materials. And if there's heavy fighting, heavy shelling, if a reactor vessel is ruptured, you could end up with a Chernobyl type event. And both sides right now are trying to position themselves so that if it does get to that point, the other side will be blamed.
From a Russian perspective, this whole thing's been a disaster, hasn't it, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Russians have had more casualties since February 24th than they did in 10 years in war in Afghanistan. This is a colossal loser for them. I mean, what did they get for it? Some burned out cities and parts of Ukraine that they now control that are essentially a wasteland, and they may not even be able to control that for very long. And the Russian army has been decimated. And the long-term structural damage to the Russian economy is going to be costing Russians over generations. So it has been a disaster. I think a lot of the elites in Moscow know that, but right now there appears to be no backing down.
Another story that led our bulletin today was the jailing for life of an ISIS member that took part of those, well, I don't know what word you use, hideous, inhumane, awful beheadings that took place some time back now.
Yeah, one of the so-called ISIS beetles was sentenced for that. You know, it's the way it ought to be. I mean, these people are criminals, and they shouldn't be elevated beyond that. They should be treated as the common criminals, murderous thugs that they are. And justice was done here, even if Western justice, it's true of all of our countries, does take a little longer than many of us would like.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the victims' mothers spoke so eloquently outside the court today. But yeah, it breaks your heart every time you see it. Where do you see the US foreign policy at the moment? Obviously, we've seen this in the headlines quite a bit, the war on terror, more recently than, say, we have for the last year or so.
Well, there is no real understandable American foreign policy. You look, the President Biden didn't want Nancy Pelosi to go to Taiwan. Nancy Pelosi goes to Taiwan anyway. You had America pull out literally in the middle of the night and abandoning our allies in Afghanistan. And now you had al-Zawahiri living openly in a luxury apartment in Kabul. We have thousands of Americans in green card, which is legal residents in the United States, still stranded behind in Afghanistan. There's no policy with regard to Iran. The Biden administration is pathologically against anything Trump did. So now they want to lurch back into some sort of deal with the Iranians, who are still who would use the proceeds of that to export misery and terror throughout the Middle East, which they've been doing for decades. So there is no understandable American foreign policy, and this creates an opening for America's and Australia's adversaries, and doesn't exactly provide comfort to her allies.
No, exactly. John, have a cracking weekend. We love having you on the show.